This is Bloomberg Surveillance Early Edition. I'm Kriti Gupta in New York with Anna Edwards in London. Now keeping you up to date with news from around the world, here's the first word. A surprise move in China. A little-known local government official has been named the top regulator overseeing the $61 trillion financial sector. Former banker Li Yunzi will be party secretary of the newly formed National Financial Supervision and Management Bureau. The agency regulates thousands of banks, insurers, and trust firms. Bloomberg's learned New York Republican Congressman George Santos has been indicted on federal charges. He had been under investigation over possible campaign finance violations. Santos took office despite fabricating much of what he had claimed about his education and career. Former President Trump plans to appeal after a jury in New York found him liable for sexually assaulting a woman and then defaming her. It's the first verdict against him in a string of legal cases that threatened to erupt during the presidential campaign. The jury also ordered the former president to pay the woman, E. Jean Carroll, $5 million in damages. Jurors stopped short of finding him liable for rape. And Tucker Carlson will start a show on Twitter after being fired by Fox News. In a video posted on the social media platform, Carlson said he would be out with a new version of the show he'd done on Fox starting soon. Carlson was fired last month after Fox settled a defamation suit with Dominion Voting Systems for more than $787 million. Very interesting ahead of the political cycle, Anna.
Yeah, absolutely. Coming up on the program, we'll get back to the macro themes, though. Sylvia Ardania joins us, Barclays chief European economist. We will talk about US CPI. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance Early Edition. Here's what you need to know. Struggling to avoid a first-ever U.S. default, President Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy don't resolve the impasse over the debt limit. They say they'll meet again Friday. The new U.S. inflation figure may give insight on what the Federal Reserve will do next with interest rates. The Consumer Price Index out at 8:30 a.m. New York time. And across the Atlantic, shares of French bank Crédit Agricole are surging. Its investment bank posted a record performance in the first quarter. I'm Kriti Gupta in New York with Anna Edwards in London. Anna, we're talking about all these macro stories, all these stalemates in Washington. I think often the market forgets underneath the hood, record performance from companies on both sides of the Atlantic are still very much in play.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen some decent performance, certainly coming through from the banking sector here in Europe. Kriti, that plays in. But overall, European equity markets are under pressure, maybe off earlier lows, but down by 0.2% as we wait for that CPI data out from the US later that you mentioned in the headlines. Crédit Agricole is one of those businesses where we've seen the numbers delighting investors, if you like, up by 5.8%. A bit difficult for analysts to compare with last time due to some changes in accounting rules. But in terms of the numbers, the FIC performance, a 42% increase in revenue from that part of their business, certainly going down well with the investment community. JD Wetherspoons, then, this is a pub business in the UK, up by 4.9% today. They have talked positively about the degree to which Brits are perhaps making the most of all of the bank holidays, all of the public holidays we get through the month of May, and that's been going pretty well, of course, for a pub operating business. The euro is at 109.55, pretty unmoved this morning. It's been caught in that range of around 109, 110 for quite some time, Kriti. But interesting to think that we heard from Joachim Nagel today, giving us the sort of party line that there's still more hiking to come, and that's what we heard from the ECB last week. They're not on pause, so we are still expected, and Christine Lagarde reiterating that today as well. But he did also suggest that maybe we are getting closer to where they need to be in terms of restrictive territory, suggesting that there's not so much further for the ECB to go in terms of hiking rates, Kriti.
Yeah, and something that the market is very much pricing in. You're not seeing the same divide that you are seeing perhaps stateside, especially when it comes to the read-through, Anna, that you're seeing in something like yields and the dollar, which brings me right to today's market action. The two-year yield at 4.04 right now, sustainably above that 4% level, but again, kind of at the whim of not just the debt ceiling debates, but the Federal Reserve and arguably what the ECB does across the Atlantic. Is certainly a dynamic, to your point, Anna, that's affecting the dollar, as of course euro dollar stays stagnant as well, about unchanged on the Bloomberg Dollar Index right now, and unchanged in a range. Those are the terms I would use to describe the S&P 500 as well. Futures only down 0.1% in a stalemate, similar to the congressional situation in Washington. Even as we are on inflationary watch, those CPI numbers coming out in about 3 hours or so, and recessionary watch. NYMEX crude still our gauge for that, trading at about a 72 handle. So on the macro front, it does seem a little kind of frozen in time, Anna. But look, there is movement underneath the hood, especially when it comes to those debt ceiling talks. This is a really big part of the story, simply about how the market participants are really positioning for that, specifically hedging for that. Now, here's a chart that I'm going to show you for our radio audience. Stick with me. We're basically looking at credit default swap prices, essentially how much it costs to insure against the default of the United States government. We're going to a chart all the way back to 2008. We know we've had several reiterations of this debt ceiling debate and several spikes in those costs to insure to kind of match that, but no spike as large as this one that really crosses over 150 basis points when you look at the swap price. This is really important because on the surface, it looks like this is a massive move, but keep in mind the one-year CDS market for the U.S. debt is not as liquid and certainly not as big as it used to be in those previous iterations. So even though on the chart it looks like a magnified move, Anna, perhaps not so much underneath the hood.
Yeah, really interesting. The debt ceiling certainly does dominate the conversation. It continues that conversation as investors await a key U.S. inflation report for insights on the path of the Federal Reserve's rate hikes. Joining us now is Sylvia Ardagna, Barclays chief European economist. And Sylvia, there's a lot to talk about this morning. We'll get to the Bank of England, which of course is due to give its rate decision shortly. Well, that comes on Thursday. We'll get to that part of the conversation shortly. Let me start, though, with the U.S. CPI picture because, of course, global fights against inflation still very topical, and the US piece of data is due out today. What's going to matter to you when you watch this really crucial bit of US data drop?
Good morning, Anna. Well, three parts of the report will obviously matter to us. We have the headline numbers, and here we expect an increase on the month-on-month by 0.38, which leaves the annual level of inflation at 5%. It is the core print, which we think it will be just a touchdown relative to what it was a month before. We expect on the monthly increase 0.34 with a 5.5% year-on-year rate. But most importantly, it is the composition acceleration behind the core print. And here what we expect is that we will see some slowing in the service costs, but that will be offset by higher goods prices. And the higher goods prices is particularly related to the price of used cars. But I think what's important to see